We are back and ready to go with match number one. If there's something you do know, if you've ever met, spoken to, or heard him talk about Hunter Ace, is that he likes his ice cream. So that was probably not even overly, scripted or anything. He was probably genuinely getting annoyed that he was watching some ice cream just melt away right there.
Yeah, I think they nailed his resume there. The two most identifiable traits about Hunter Ace, as shown on screen: former world champion, loves ice cream. Yep, that pretty much sums up his personality to a T.
Yep, simplicity is key. But let's not talk about Hunter Ace for now, with plenty of time to talk about him a little bit later on. For now, we have Bunny Hopper versus Felkane, and it is going to be a spicy match number one as far as I'm concerned. We see Warrior for Bunny Hopper long gone, as it is going to be banned out. What a shame, Sottle. And Demon Hunter is going to be banned for Felkane there. As I was talking to you while we were sat getting ready to go live, talking to you about Asia Pacific and how it panned out. And for me, most matches, and I think most of chat will agree as well, the question I was thinking of, should Demon Hunter have been banned out for this one? Because it's looking pretty strong. What do you think, Sal?
It is still looking very strong. I can't wait to see what next week's wave of Demon Hunter nerfs are going to be. But it is extremely powerful overall. Still, of course. I mean, the class was designed that way, to be strong, right? It has to have been. It's a new class. You want to have the new toy and it be exciting and strong and powerful. So I'm totally okay with it being strong, but it still is very strong. And I know we were playtesting a lot of the decks that we were theorizing were supposed to be brought to counter Demon Hunter. Really don't, as far as our testing
did not work.
Yeah, so we'll wait.
Sottle got crushed. But yeah, we can check out Bunny Hopper's lineup post-ban, so there'll be no Warrior. We were going to talk a lot, actually. We even went to the soul-wrenching, destroying factor of practice in this Warrior deck. But it is not going to be played, at least in this series. So Felkane just saying a hard pass on that one, at least showing respect to it, Soton. Probably a lot more respect than we have for the deck. But what does Bunny Hopper have left now? Demon Hunter, Galakron Secret Rogue, and Highlander Mage. What do you make of what he's got left?
I think it's a pretty solid looking lineup. I'm not sure where I stand currently on some build of 2-Ovs Rogue as opposed to a Highlander Rogue. I think we're seeing a pretty big split amongst the players on that as well. Tempo Demon Hunter we talked about. I still think Demon Hunter is the bring. It's definitely not been nerfed to the point where it's just not part of the lineup anymore. And the Control Warrior, as you mentioned, thrown out. And then the wild card deck, Highlander Mage, capable of winning or losing any matchup based on the whim of the cards that it plays.
As you can tell, Sottle a fan of Highlander Mage to the extent where he definitely owns all the cards for that deck. But most importantly, let's check out Felkane's lineup and see what he has to try and take down Bunny Hopper and continue the French dominance of Hearthstone right now. Because I talked about Felkane and Zim in the curve earlier this week, and the fact that Felkane's here again, is this ever going to stop Sottle?
It's certainly not looking like it. It's a good-looking lineup again. I'm a big fan of Zoo. I was talking last week about, I'm not necessarily sure whether you can bring it when you have to not bring Galakron Warlock in order to bring it. But I am a fan of the deck. I think it's very high power level. I think Felkane got some bad draws where it mattered last week, but the deck does open you up to do that. It can beat itself in a lot of regards. He's on the other side of the Rogue debate, where he's playing the Highlander Rogue as opposed to a 2-Ovs Rogue, and then his Warrior Raven is far more fun. He's got the classic Pain, Enrage, No Hands, whatever you want to call it, Warrior. Yeah. The Battle Rage Warrior, as you like to refer to it as. Raven.
I will say as well, though, for me, if there's ever a week for this Warlock list, it might be now, because, arguably the Galakron version got nerfed because of the, Sacrificial Pacts not being able to use as an offensive tool anymore. So there has been a quite a dramatic reduction of Galakron Warlocks overall. And just roughly speaking, this Warlock was banned out roughly half the time in Felkane's run going through the Swiss, so it is garnering respect, or at least an acknowledgement of a lack of preparation for the deck from his opponents, because you don't really build a lineup that can deal with Zoo a lot of the time, and maybe this is a deck that can sweep when we're looking at, it's facing rogues. Even I would say Highlander Hunters will struggle because they just don't have the powerful actual removal for it. You can argue that some of these slower decks like Mage might struggle as well. So maybe they were just a week too early. They were, living in the future, the Frenchman, last week, bringing this zoo, and now it might be the deck that gets there. But let's go into game number 1, as Bunny Hopper is going to be on this Demon Hunter, maybe the wild card in terms of just sweeping potential, but Felkane is going to be on his Warrior.
Is opening with the Serpent Egg as well. Definitely one of the most powerful cards you want to be looking for in the mulligan. If you do want some tips on how to mulligan better, by the way, make sure to go and check out Gia's excellent video published on the Hearthstone Esports video called Mull It Over, where she goes into some of the mulligan decisions from week 1 in greater detail. I think she did a fantastic job of it, so do go check that out.
Yep, it's looking really good. And so far, what do you make of Bunny Hopper's opening hand here? Because again, I feel like the mulligan is just never really simple for Demon Hunter, and all these cards can be quite useful versus Warrior in itself, just for the early removal tools to stop them maybe snowballing. But do you think Bunny Hopper's trying to be the aggressor here, and instead Felkane's just going to say, I'll play the removal game?
I would expect that's the way the matchup goes, generally, or at least in my experience, I should say, that's how the matchup goes most often, is that Demon Hunter will pull ahead early just because their minions are kind of immediately good, whereas the Warrior early tempo minions generally take a turn or two of setup, and then they're higher quality overall, but in that turn or two of setup that you have, the Demon Hunter's kind of run over you already, and then it quite often comes down to the big, risky skipper, Blood Boil Brute swing turns instead to get the Warrior back into the game.
Okay, well, let's see how it does pan out here. Let's just look at, as well, Felkane's Warrior specifically, the Frothing Berserker, the Warmaul Challengers, 1 Kor'kron Elite. So again, you might not be too used to seeing Frothing Berserkers, but it's definitely something that people are playing around a lot with in general. I just don't know if it's as consistent as it needs to be, I guess.
Yeah, it certainly has, weird, budget synergy with Warmaul Challenger, right? But,
yes.
Generally only in worlds where your Frothing has lived a turn, and that's kind of win more in the regards that, if your Frothing lived a turn, you're probably in a pretty good spot regardless of what other cards are in your deck, right?
Yeah, and the question I would always ask with Frothing is, for me, it feels the best when you just drop Frothing on 3 and it soaks some attacks, because it's almost got taunt, right? Your opponent really can't just leave it alive. So if that's the case, is there a better 3-drop? Is Overconfident Orc a card that we might see in this instead, because high health, which is normally good for this deck, it kind of does the same job as it literally has taunt. I don't know. I think there's still a lot of room for these decks to kind of grow and change.
It's kind of a thing, right? Because we certainly saw Tar Creeper being played in aggro decks for a while, right? Just as a wall to protect your more important minions. I will say Tar Creeper is a much better card than Overconfident.
Yeah.
Though. So, we will wait and see, I guess, and how this metagame evolves.
Yeah, in the meantime, Bunny Hopper with the 2 Battle Fiends is just putting on the pressure. Nerf? What nerf? Those look like 3/2s to me after an attack, so they're still putting forward a lot of damage. Felkane does have the Battle Rage in hand, and the Risky Skipper as well, so my question now is, how long can he afford to wait, and how fancy can he go with this turn? Or does he have to take the more near future, immediate, just remove the board and don't try and go for a Battle Rage until a bit later?
Well, I kind of counter what you say here, because I think my answer to your question changed completely because of the Battle Fiend nerf. I think the Battle Fiend nerf has been enormous in this game, because if the Battle Fiends were attack for 2 and then attack for 3, and that's 4 extra damage that Felkane would have taken this game. And then suddenly, he probably can't afford to be greedy at all with his Risky Skipper. Now that he's got that little bit of an extra buffer, he might feel like he can wait a turn or 2 more for an Armor Smith, for a Blood Boil Brute, for a Bloodsworn Mercenary, something bigger to pay this off when he does come out with it. So I think the nerf is very, very impactful in this game state that we have at the moment.
You can see how Bunny Hopper wants to push here. He does have a bit of an awkward hand. I wouldn't be too surprised to see Chaos Strike. Yeah, just to get a bit deeper into the deck, right? Use the mana. You want to push damage anyway, and he needs something a little bit more proactive to do next turn. And meanwhile, one thing to note in Warrior, as we found out through playtesting, is that Ethereal Lackey is really the spice that comes into this deck sometimes, because a lot of the Warrior spells are hard removal, which is what you can be lacking in this deck. So Ethereal Lackey can actually make a huge impact to any game outcome, whether you go to the extremes of, say, Brawl, Plague of Wrath, or even if it's just a Whirlwind. can often be the difference between winning or losing the game with this deck. But now
I think with
Falcon has to make
the
choice.
addition, with the addition of Chaos Strike on the previous turn from Bunny Hopper to push all that extra damage, I think Falcane now probably feels like he has to commit the Skipper here, which is very bad for him in the long run. Unless he can create some insane swing turn here, he's going to be in trouble because he's not armor smithing this, he's not battle raging this, he's really put himself kind of behind the play here. So I respect this frothing line a lot. Even though viewers can see and we can see that it's very, very vulnerable to I-Beam, I think Falcane has to try and actually play a swing turn this turn. He has to take a risk because of how far behind he is in the game. I think this frothing play is about as good as he was going to get.
Yeah, if we're talking realistic outcomes, I think this is the play that actually makes something happen in the game and not just buys Falcane one turn to just die a bit slower, right? Like, he could actually win the game off the back of this play, as you quite rightly pointed out. It's not going to work because of I-Beam, but it was still a good play. And you can see Falcane disappointed there, but he knew he was in a bit of a desperate spot. And it is going to wind... one more turn, Sol.
Yep.
Oh, I almost, if I was Falcane, I almost wish I just didn't even see the card. And I could just get out the game right now, because that's how bad it feels. He does still have a lackey, though. He's not out yet.
Again, even in a non-live environment, I still find Falcane incredibly entertaining to watch. There, like his facial expression went from like anticipatory to immediately angry to then just kind of resigned to defeat to then again like refocus. Like, okay, let's find a way out of this mess.
Yeah, he's not just dead, right?
No. He definitely does wear his heart on his sleeve, though, in terms of his expressions, which I often wondered in a live environment whether he's one of those players that like gives stuff away to his opponent just by being so expressive like that. I don't know.
I always like it because I think at most of the time, at worst, you just end up distracting your opponent, don't you? It would wind me up if someone kept like moving around and being a bit more animated. It would definitely annoy me if I was playing sat opposite. I mean. But
he just cleaves 2 1/1s. Oh, the level of respect. It is worth. Cleaves 2 1/1s, but then skips the armor to develop a serpent egg there instead.
He needs battle rage, doesn't he? He needs battle rage.
He does need battle rage, but he also could have developed the serpent egg and then armored, right? Which is kind of the same thing. You leave 2 damage in play, armor up for 2, and then you still have a card in your hand that might do better than killing 2 1/1s. Kind of interesting.
No, that's why I'm quiet, actually. I'm kind of just trying to think about... I'm trying to, like, play the game out 2 different ways, and just to see if 2 dudes actually change anything. Maybe the worry is, if Bunny Hopper goes wide this turn,
I grow impatient.
he might not actually ever kill those 2 1/1s, if that makes sense. So even though they're only 1/1s, the damage stacks. So, yeah, it's kind of interesting, though, isn't it? Because right now... You would easily argue that just armoring's better, but maybe the future turns it gets a lot worse.
Right. Certainly not a play I'm taking a stance on. It's just it's a thing that popped into my brain, and so it came out of my mouth. Such is casting.
A little bit unfortunate as well, honestly, for Falcane that this is one of the minions that was played, or the only minion that's played by Bunny Hopper, because he can't use the Goblin Lackey to rush the egg and damage it without killing it and making a brand new minion, which means his battle rage just gets that little bit worse. But he could just go for Injured Tolve battle rage and just deal with it. It sounds bad, but can whip in an Armor Smith as well if he wants. An Armor Smith, sorry, an Armor Up. Can I open the box and see what the Lackey is first? Makes total sense. Not bad.
Certainly one of the premium ones in this situation.
I will throw it out there, although I feel like it's a given, but Kayn is in Bunny Hopper's deck, so, he has the chance to avoid taunts, obviously, as Demon Hunter is wont to do. But I like this, and now he can even play like double Lackey if he really wants. Ooh, Rampage! Was Rampage ever... Huh. Okay, now this is probably better than Rampage, right?
He couldn't, so he would want to like Rampage and Rush Lackey if he was going to make that play, and then you couldn't do that after the Battle Rage anyway.
Yeah.
So
I was wondering whether
just
just Rampage was better, but on a glance at how this board turns out, no, it wasn't.
Yes, exactly. You add 6 extra points of taunt this way as opposed to 3 extra points of taunt, right? Just stronger.
And also we can see as well, just the fact that Twin Slice exists means that he could have actually, done a good job at getting through one taunt or pushing enough damage with Twin Slice's hero power and, maybe one other card. So it's looking pretty good. Eye-Beam, Metamorphosis, and the Crimson Sigil Runner. Do you just go meta this time?
I mean, against any other class, this wouldn't be a decision, right? Your opponent's at 5, Metamorphosis was offered, you take it, you have lethal next turn. But this is the class that can gain 1 million armor on at will, essentially. So it's much more difficult, but I don't think either of the other picks are really attractive enough to get Bunny Hopper off that plan.
And I do feel like at this point in the game, Felkane is not showing that he has an armor smith in hand, is he? In
fact, quite the opposite.
Yes.
He's very clearly showing he does not have an armor
exactly, which I think if there's something that pushes you over an edge of an already fairly secure decision, it's that.
Crucially as well, the Metamorphosis does come close, at least. Let's see, Felkane would armor this turn, Bunny Hopper's first shot would be next turn, then he'd armor again, and then it would be at 9 total, and then Bunny Hopper's second shot would be the turn after that, dealing 10 damage. So it still does just have the hero power covered in terms of getting lethal. So crucially, Felkane does require an armor smith or some other random way of generated healing or whatever else from Ethereal Lackey.
Yeah, and also as well, I think Bunny Hopper's potentially banking on the fact that, well, Felkane has to armor up this turn. Is he going to? Because maybe he feels like he doesn't have the mana. It means he only has 5 mana to do anything with. And if he armors up, he's safe, I'll say, through Metamorphosis. Is he safe on board if he just armors up? You know what I mean? Like, is that good enough? Maybe not.
So if he warmals the 2/2 here, then his Blood Boil costs 5. So then you can run a 1/1 in to make it cost 4 and then play it. But then, as you mentioned, Raven, that does mean he is foregoing the armor up. This is the best play he has on board since it's a full clear, but he does have to forgo the armor to do that, which means the Bunny Hopper's pick of the Metamorphosis means that he is going to rip the Watermelon to the face. Easy 5 damage. Felkane obviously could have theoretically played around that, but in that spot, if he chose to armor up, he doesn't have the resources.
Wait, Bunny Hopper's chair, new Grandmaster.
He doesn't have the resources to stop the incredible onslaught from that sentient chair that unfortunately does have the necessary skills to play Demon Hunter effectively.
Yeah, and I think that's just, again, it's just Bunny Hopper put himself in a position where it was almost just a win-win, because like we explained, armor up is a kind of win, and then if he doesn't armor up, he literally wins the game anyway. So a win already to Demon Hunter. Is this going to be the story of the day, or is we going to find someone that can actually take it down? I don't know. Would you just ban Demon Hunter off the bat, or do you think there's a lot more that goes into it, Saul?
I don't think so. I think coming into this week, choosing to ban Demon Hunter is kind of defeatist. I think you would try to develop a counter deck, something in Last Hero Standing where you could just snipe the Demon Hunter. The problem is you quite often need 2 of them, because your opponent, if you have 1 snipe deck for the Demon Hunter, your opponent can just ban that away and then queue Demon Hunter first and sweep your lineup. So you quite often need 2, so you can take the ban on one of them and still have the counter remaining on the second one. That's very hard to do, I think, currently in the metagame, and that's where it starts to become a little bit more appealing to fall back on that Demon Hunter ban.
Yeah, that's it. Even just from practice, I feel like Demon Hunter has the capability to sweep almost even if someone builds a lineup against it for that purpose. It'll be a little bit crazy. But anyway, that is just going to be game 1 between Bunny Hopper and Felkane. Bunny Hopper taking the lead 1-0 with his Demon Hunter, but we are going to go to a short break while we set up game number 2. We'll be right back with some more Hearthstone Grandmasters. Or not. And no one can call me a liar, as that was indeed a short break, as we go straight into game number 2 between Bunny Hopper and Felkane. Bunny Hopper leading the way with Demon Hunter, and just a refresher, this is Last Hero Standing, which means he won with Demon Hunter, he gets to play it again. How broken. But Felkane does lose his Warrior, which means he cannot lock in Warrior again for this series. He has to play one of his 2 other decks to go into it, so... Already, it feels like Felkane's got a bit of an uphill climb here, Sottle.
It does, yes. I think in APAC we only saw 1 straight-up Demon Hunter sweep, which is probably out of 5 series about what I would predict, I guess, in terms of how many series that's going to happen. I think it is... Even if it's not the most powerful deck in the game right now, I do think it's the deck with the most potential to sweep, just because it's such a versatile deck that if it draws the right half of its deck, it can essentially beat anything, right? So it does have the potential to be able to do that. But I'm now more interested in seeing how this Zoo performs for Felkane, as just towards the end of the week last week, it did start to let him down a little bit in those crucial matches that he lost to Ball Control.
It really did. And again, I'm not sure if that is a deck building issue or a just it happens to us some days issue, because his draw was really bad towards that last day, right? So I believe, looking at the list, there hasn't been too much that has changed. Not from memory, at least. So it looks like Felkane's just putting his trust in the deck once again. He does have the Imp down nice and early, and also it's going to be on the receiving end of that Carpet, the Voidwalker, some pretty good cards against Demon Hunter specifically as well.
Yeah, and I do think Felkane has built this deck in one of the most feast or famine ways possible. But I do think he hit the famine side of that way more consistently than he was supposed to towards the end of the week last week. That we were watching games where he was getting halfway through his deck and he hadn't hit a single Scrap Imp, Magic Carpet, or Hand of Gul'dan, for example, which is just nonsense. Like, that's not supposed to happen. So this is much more like, a reasonable draw. The Zoo players will generally full mulligan for those power cards, so you're expected to hit them, fairly often. Felkane has 1 of them, which I think is a relatively, balanced outcome. So we will see how it progresses from here.
Yep, the life tap not too crazy, probably, and 99% of the time you life tap onto with this deck, as you just want more cards, especially with the Scrap Imp, of course, down. You want more and more and more minions to be buffed to overpower the Demon Hunter, and this is one of the games where the matchups where I can't see it happening, because a lot of the success I've seen versus Demon Hunter is not necessarily an overly control style, but more a just wipe them off the board so they're never allowed back on style, and then overwhelm them after that. That's the overall strategy I've seen work the best. So Felkane's definitely got the tools for it, but is it going to be too slow is my question, because there's a Gladebound Adept there, there's the Warglaves of Azinoth, which is insane, not only value, but also damage pressure.
I like this play from Bunny Hopper, is developing max power now because he knows that there is likely to be an enormous Magic Carpet in his future. So he needs to try and get ahead of that, push early damage as early as he can, and then, as you were saying, maybe those Warglaves and Gladebound can finish the job for him. You can see just the difference a Scrap Hound makes. It's so insane. Like, just make Shield Bearer the best card in the game. Look at that. 1 mana, 2/6 Taunt. Let's go.
And I think this, combined with the slightly slower nature of Demon Hunter today, by slight, I really mean slight, it might just be enough, because Felkane also has some juice, because he has the Evil Genius, which obviously then knocks on to having 2 lackeys. So it's not like he has to press life tap every single turn to have a chance to stay in the game. He does have ways of generating cards without that, and without endangering his life. But he's looking really good right now. Bunny Hop has definitely gone uphill climb.
And that is a difference from last week. He was not running Evil Genius in week 1.
Right.
Which is actually something that we talked about towards the end, where, I said that his deck does have these opportunities to whiff completely, whereas other builds of the deck will include Lackey generation, which, if you don't hit your power cards but you do hit Lackeys are still very good cards that can do things and stall for you, significantly better than an unbuffed Argent Squire and Shield Bearer or whatever else you might have in your hand. Right. So I do very much like that inclusion from Felkane. I think that is a good adaptation on his part.
Yeah, and what do you make of that turn from Bunny Hopper? Are you a fan of the Battle Fiend coming down? Was that down due to necessity? Because the Fell Screamer's reduction of the next demon played carries on over multiple turns. It is not a you have to use it this turn. So he could have waited to see what he drew next turn, but with double 5 mana cards in hand, do you think this was just, well, if I don't do it now, I might never use the ability?
Exactly, yeah. I think if he drew, Priestess of Fury off the top, then maybe using the discount and on that for 5 would have been better, but, any other demon that he gets a discount on, well, he's likely going 5 into 5 over the coming turns anyway, right? So how much of a difference does it make?
Right. Oh! Okay, that weird noise I just made, sorry, but Skull of Gul'dan is a pretty good draw from Bunny Hopper here, because that could be the card that gives him enough to actually get it over the line, because he's had to use so many resources, taking down taunts. Now there's a carpet in the way, so maybe that just gives him enough here, especially if he can get cards along the lines of Kain, Metamorphosis, maybe just something else to just gain some extra bit of push damage.
I think what he needs is what I am going to describe after our playtesting yesterday as the Raven Special, which is the discounted Altruis of Skull of Gul'dan, which you appear to hit every single game of Demon Hunter you've ever played.
If you're good, you're good, Sal. What can I say?
Yeah, agreed.
Oh, we should record playtesting. I think it would make a great little behind the scenes, because all it was yesterday was Sottle getting progressively more annoyed that I was just hard curving Demon Hunter at him game and game again.
Well, the thing was, it's just like, genuinely, I'm not even mad because I volunteered for it, but I did end up playing like the bad matchup side of every single matchup we tested, right?
Yeah?
Yeah, okay.
I'm alright with that, believe it or not.
Fair enough. Going back to this Skull, though, from Bunny, it is going to be a little awkward for him to cast. I, of course, agree that it's a great draw, but because of the outcast positioning, obviously it takes him a lot of mana to get it to the left, and now next turn on his 6 mana turn, he's going to draw a card that blocks it from the right, so it's likely going to be a turn 7 Skull, which may just end up being a turn too slow here, based on, how strong Felkain's opener is.
Okay, I half assumed that Glavebound was almost a given here, just because of the nature of already having a decent weapon swing as well.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, right? So Skull of Gul'dan will have to be cast on turn 7.
Oh, sorry, yeah. Sorry, I thought you meant he had to use Glavebound, then do the cards he draws next turn, then cast Skull of Gul'dan. I was like, that was very slow, Saul. Sorry, yeah, my misunderstanding. Glavebound mainly just saving him some health there more than anything, but already that is just not looking too hot, is it, with 6 damage for Felkain. Ready and locked and loaded for Bunny Hopper, which means it's going to go down to 2. But I don't think there's actually 2 damage in the deck.
Sulfur.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Ah, that's what I like about this version. There's no boars in it.
Oh, okay, sure.
Yeah, no, you know what I mean? It's like, I was talking last week about, it's a bit overly fancy. Like Stone to Spores, really? Question mark. But yeah, I like that. Okay. Oh. Bunny Hopper's all in, and that's going to be the downside of this Priestess of Fury pick. When you draw 2 of them, is a lot of mana, even with a Skull of Gul'dan. And Felkain is going to be able to even this up 1-1. So now, the Demon Hunter is off the table for Bunny Hopper, and Felkain gets his Zoo once again for the next game. So he's going to be happy at just getting Demon Hunter out of the way there. And I believe that Bunny Hopper is now, as I check the lists, what do you think he is going to run into this? What do you like, Rogue or the Highlander Mage versus the Zoo?
It's a good question. So what is Felkain's other remaining deck that he has available? He's lost with the Warrior, He's Demon Hunter is banned, so he has the Highlander Rogue as his one remaining deck after this Zoo as well. So I don't think there's any decks that Bunny Hopper necessarily needs to reserve for that Rogue, so that factor doesn't come into it. So I think it's just straight up a matter of which matchup he wants. Right. And I would imagine Rogue, 2-of's Rogue, probably does okay against the Zoo, especially when it's running Vendetta package, which is not something that we always see, but Bunny Hopper is choosing to run. So I think I would end up on Rogue here, personally.
Yeah, look at list as well. I do rate the secrets quite highly in some level of anti-aggro because not only can Bamboozle really just get you one big chunky minion on the board that can, soak up some trades, but also just the ambush. Although the Zoo minions might look small, well, when they're small, the ambush minion is a 2/3, which is a good shape. And then when they're bigger, well, a 2/3 with poison can kill a Carpet, for example, or a Nightshade Matron we can see in the opening hand. So I like the Rogue as well, but it looks like Bunny Hopper has gone for the Mage. And again, the Mage has a lot of anti-aggro tools. My only worry is you really have to make sure you draw him, although I feel, and if not, I feel like you are very dead.
It's fair. Looking at the list, it is built fairly anti-aggro now that I break it down. So maybe this is the intention here. He does have Ice Barrier, he has the early spells, of course, he does have Doomsayer in there as well. But there are a couple of pretty clunky cards that might mess him up here, like Vulpera Scoundrel is in his list, Boom Pistol Bully is in his list. Although I guess that can have some effect on Zoo, but not a particularly powerful one. So yeah, it'll be interesting. We'll see.
So, because that's the case, do you think it's happened now, but do you think there's a chance at keeping certain cards like a Nova in the mulligan? Or do you think that the full mulligan there from Bunny Hopper was correct in terms of just saying, well, there's better things I could draw?
I think it's always a full mull, yeah. I think there's enough AoE and enough removal that you're likely going to draw stuff that you need by the time you want to use it. And you don't want to be Frost Novering in the early game, right? You want to be playing minions as much as possible and competing that way. You want your Zephyrus, you want an early Doomsayer to just snag tempo. Just any of your early minions and Arcane Breaths and small removal spells, I think, are much more important. And just on that note, you see Bunny Hopper already drawing a Rolling Fireball, which is, an equivalent level of AoE, I guess, that he's able to use around that sort of turn 5, turn 6, turn 7 turn, where he will probably be pressed into using something.
Right, and the Zephyrus is a big deal here as well, because you can often just move it around where it is just going to be a removal tool, almost guaranteed. And I feel like a lot of the time I've seen this list from Felkine, it's one big push onto the board, and then if that gets dealt with, it's pretty hard to insta refill, if you know what I mean. Like, you can refill because you're a Warlock and you're in Hand of Gul'dan, but I feel like it takes a turn or so to get cooking, and Mage can do a lot with that sort of gap it's created.
I wonder with the hand that Bunny has, whether this is just Zephyrus Wildgrowth, because his hand is extremely greedy right now. I don't think you necessarily need to backstab a 2/2 in this world.
I was just going to say, if you're ever asking me right now, I think the Wild Growth is a lot better than a backstab. Because the 3/2 is just going to trade in anyway, and Bunny Hopper does agree, and I do like this. It gets him to that rolling fireball a lot quicker. And also, a side note, he does actually have the Dragon Caster that is active. You could do that into Deep Freeze. Does Warlock come back from that?
Well, the problem with that is the 2 water elementals are great, but the freeze is probably not very impactful, right? They're going to have multiple minions and you only get to freeze one of them.
Yeah, I think it's just you freeze the one that's most likely to be able to deal with the water elemental, and then you just use the freeze to defend them more than defend yourself, if that makes sense. So then the water elementals are going to do the heavy lifting. It's pretty big.
Certainly a 4/4 and a 0 mana spell of any regard, if it was expensive, is incredibly powerful. That's why we see Dragoncasters scamming so many games for this deck. Incredibly strong card. Ooh! Speaking of scamming games, Expired Merchant Hand of Gul'dan combo in hand now for Felkane.
I feel like that's a bit harsh, Sol. I think people are using scam for every other word nowadays. Back in my day, it meant something. I feel like this is what the deck wants to do, right?
So I am not using scam as any kind of insult. If your deck is not able, to scam people in the game Hearthstone, you probably built it wrong, right? Like,
sure.
You need something that's just absurdly powerful that if you hit it, your opponent probably can't counter. It's just kind of an essential part of deck building, as far as I'm concerned.
I just heard you use it when describing a Highlander mage, so I presumed it was a negative form. That's all.
That is fair. It's fairly safe to assume that anything I say about Highlander mage is supposed to be insulting.
What about just rolling fireball from the right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think you actually saw Felkane sort of counting with his finger across his board, which I think is exactly what he was doing last turn. Exactly what kind of impact the rolling fireball had. Because the positioning of his minions, like where exactly the shield bearer goes, for example, is actually very relevant to that. Because the shield bearer can, tank the 4 and stop stuff like that from happening, which might now be what Falcane is shaking his head about.
I think it is, because not having to go Falcane here, it's not rocket science, is it? To try and put the shield bearer
Wow.
in. No, you know what I mean. It's not like
You're spicy today, Raven.
well, yeah, it's the first day, innit?
Yeah.
But rolling fireball exists, right?
Yes.
And the impact that shield bearer could have made to that turn is actually huge.
Yeah.
So I think Falcane's probably shaking his head, maybe didn't overly think about it, and then realised after the fact.
That's what I'm particularly confused about, is that his motion he was making with his finger was like he was sort of counting one by one across his board, right? So, like, what was he looking at if not rolling fireball in that position? Very, very odd.
I don't know, I've not got a good answer to that one.
Yeah.
Bunny Hopper, though, in the meantime, does have this Dragoncaster live now, so he could use it for the Deep Freeze. And maybe you just go Deep Freeze Kayn, and then go. Nothing really looks better to me. And then next turn he could coin out Tortolan.
Sorry, who are you calling? Cameron Sure.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, apologies. I just call him Kayn.
But he doesn't ignore Taunt, Raven. As much as I'd like every card in the game to ignore Taunt.
Well, I can actually call him something else. I'm just not sure if I can on broadcast, so I won't.
Okay, alright. We'll run that one by the producers and find out, I guess.
So, what do you think about this freeze? Obviously, this is to stop the Gul'dan coming back, the Hand of Gul'dan. But is it better than getting? I guess it's probably better than just shuffling the Prime in, right? Higher attack.
I think so, yeah. Yeah, I think so. I think also, like, the Fiendish Servant is worth thinking about here as well, because actually, in a weird way, the Fiendish Servant represents the most attack.
Right.
If the Servant couldn't attack, then it's also not buffing something else, which then attacks for less as well. But no, I think the Expired Merchant is pretty much always a good freeze.
Also, just to note, something that Falcane definitely needs to be aware of is Bunny Hopper just runs a straight-up Polymorph in his deck, which means I was looking at, can he just go face and then play Terran? Like, well, would that just be insane? But no, he can't, because without a way to destroy it himself, it could just get polymorphed, and then that's probably signals the end of the game.
And there is a very fine balancing act in this matchup, which I did play a little bit, between sort of, you need minions on board because you need to represent pressure, right? Like, you can't just let the mage trot along to turn 9, turn 10 without putting pressure on them, because then they'll just do mage things. But, of course, like, you saw that turn. Falcane played Imprison Scrap Imp, but then also played another 1-drop out of his hand, which would have been buffed if he held onto it. That's just kind of example of, like, the very fine balancing act in this matchup between how much pressure do I need now versus how much long-term value do I need from these hand buffs.
Right. Bunny Hopper, again, just to mention, does have the Coin Tortolan, but whether he needs to go for it is another question. Looking at the list, he does have Blizzard. He would have Blizzard potentially available. Power of Creation. No Puzzle Box as he did draw it. Conjurer's Calling is a very Wild West style play, I think, if he tried to do that. But, and I guess Nova was another option that would have been popped up, but nothing too crazy unless you're very confident you're going to get Blizzard. And I guess Bunny Hopper feels like he doesn't need to roll that dice.
I love this from Bunny Hopper, by the way, just the persistent freezing of this Expired Merchant. You saw Falcane give the nod, just like, yeah, all right, you got me, this is very annoying. He does have the counterplay this turn, though, which the player was just about to suggest. I think this has to be a Terran, because then that activates these Hands of Gul'dan back into your hand. You can then play Nightshade to be able to cycle through.
I'm going to do my trademark crazy suggestion.
Okay.
Would you ever Soulfire the Terran instead of playing the 5/5?
No.
Okay. Well, I tried.
I mean, what were the odds? So he's just drawn these 3 cards on the right. So his hand was 2 Hand of Gul'dans and 3 other cards. So it was below 50-50. Yeah, I don't like it. I hate it, Raven.
Okay. Well, hate, probably a bit strong, but okay.
Nope.
Well, my point being now is this board...
I despise it. I loathe it. Alright, carry on.
Highlander Mage is the best deck. So anyway, my point being overall is not only was the discard potentially very good with the draw, but also this board is almost non-existent for Felkane this turn. And as you mentioned earlier, letting the mage kind of have a relaxed step into the last few, mana required for the end game is scary to me. And this did. It's easy to say now, but it did open up the Alexstrasza push, which is pretty dangerous now for Felkane. And again, I'm not saying Soulfire was 100% the right choice, but I think the Soulfire would have just led to a very different game state, that's all. Are you just waiting on this Yogg box for lethal? That's all. Is this bated breath?
Sorry, I was just kind of sat in silence, like staring at this turn, because this turn is impossibly hard from Felkane's perspective. He has multiple different rush options that spend his mana in different ways, Magic Carpet and the Nightshade Matron. He has a Hand of Gul'dan that he could discard to then draw more 1-drops to activate with Magic Carpet, but then not really enough mana to play it. So my initial instinct was that the just straight-up Magic Carpet clear was better, but Felkane's first instinct appeared to be the Nightshade Matron play instead, which kind of got me a little bit shook in terms of what was going to happen. Wow!
Well, that happened.
Insane. That's an outcome right there.
There is the Blizzard, though, which is going to lock out a lot of this. The Malygos not actually live right now, but Blizzard, Ice Barrier isn't terrible. Unfortunately for Bunny Hopper, it doesn't achieve what I would deem priority number... Okay, not priority number 1, probably priority number 2. Priority number 1 is not dying, but priority number 2 is getting this carpet off the board.
There's only one board space to play with. There will be 2 after the Blizzard is cast, which I guess is slightly more dangerous. But also, I think if Bunny Hopper breaks down the list, and I think just his glance to the side here, I would theorize second monitor with Deck Tracker right now. He's looking at exactly how many 1-drops there are left to deal with, and the answer is actually not that many.
Right. And just not a lot of burst damage, especially after seeing the one Soulfire used, right? So it's not like, oh, if he gets... the trade in, he can set up for a big burst turn next turn, and he can whip in Ice Barrier without any real problem. And then it's all about the Yogg box.
Hey.
I will say that, going off what you said a little bit earlier as well, Bunny Hopper choosing the excessive levels of freezing this game has really made an impact, right? Like not being able to get the extra Hand of Gul'dans available for Felkane due to those rare frosts, and even just the continued freezing afterwards has really slowed this game down.
Those were actually both of his remaining 1-drops that he has left this turn. I think that is now every 1-drop in his deck gone. The 1 Blazing Battle Mage and the 1 Argent Squire was all he had left, I think.
Do you think it's very important for him to get this egg down at some point this turn as well? Just to give him more leeway with any kind of hard AoE removal?
I mean, he already has a layer with the Terran, right? So adding the egg doesn't change that much.
How much is in the Terran?
The Terran has...
I thought there wasn't a lot.
An Expired Merchant and a Beaming Sidekick in it.
Okay. It doesn't sound like 7 minion Sol, so therefore, there could always be more.
Sure. I mean, he already has this egg over here as well, so... Yeah. So I'm just gesturing with my mouse now as if people can see that. That's not how this works. I do like this, though. This was the point that I wanted to lead on to, which was just using the 3-3 to trade and just maintaining a 7-7 on board. Like, that feels more important than adding one more Death Rattle to the board to me. Just a big, scary thing on board that can live.
Definitely agree, yes. I actually was thinking of this play, but the egg instead of the imp. Because I didn't think the game he has time for the imp, which is a little bit confusing to me. That's 2 turns away from really doing anything.
Wow, Bunny Hopper is not a believer. Not a believer. All right, memes aside, there's actually a point of analysis here and a potential puzzle box turn, which I'm a big fan of. He was pretty likely to get Frostnova there, and Frostnova is the absolute turbo nuts this turn, right? Like, Frostnova is actually better than just about anything that can come out of puzzle box that isn't just directly lethal.
It just wins him the game, right?
Exactly.
Like, straight up, because of this imp can't be used to do anything. Nothing can be played. Bunny Hopper knows the only damage from hand available is a Soulfire, and guess what? It does 4, not 5. And look at Felkine's health. It's a Soulfire his own minion to make some room. What?
What did he have left that did the job? Curious. He clearly saw an out there. Oh, one remaining evil genius.
Oh, for the lackeys, sure.
Yeah. That's probably the out he was playing for.
And also would have generated board space as well.
Yes,
in
exactly.
like a potential roundabout way. But that's not going to do it as Bunny Hopper gets the Seer Mat. And without any fancy Yogg boxes, which Sottle, which no doubt will be happy with, Bunny Hopper takes game number 3, going up to a 2-1 lead. And this series, as can often be the case in Last Hero Standing, I feel like we talk a lot about sweep potential, but it is very often a back and forth sort of scramble between the players, right? Because we queue our decks. Whoever wins, the other player gets to queue a deck they feel is strong versus it, so it is likely to win. And then it basically goes back and forth, where it can wind all the way back, where whoever wins the first game, like the blind pick outcome, is looking pretty good overall to win the series if the lineups are even, arguably, because that's just how like the back and forth works in the best of 5.
Yeah, this is a really hard point to construct. I might just get Lorinda, our stats man, to make this point for me, and then I'll just repeat it as if I'm smart on stream next time. But essentially, 3-0 and 3-2 are the two most common results in Last Hero Standing, because the counter matchup in match 2 is so important. If you win that matchup, then you're likely to go back and forth and hit the 3-2. Whereas if you lose that matchup, well, you've just lost your counter deck against your opponent's sweep deck, and then the sweep is most likely to happen. The reason that's nonsense is because actually there's just more permutations for 2-1 and 3-1 than there are of those two results. So actually, in pure terms, that's not true. But hopefully Lorinda understands my point and can come up with a better way to say that for me. There you go, there's a job for you.
I just tuned out halfway through that song because all I heard then was,
Most
here's a
people do.
point, and now I'm going to push a new point as to why that point was wrong. So I was like, wow, I'm just going to look at the pictures on my screen and see what happens. But most importantly
like Derek looking at memes when we're supposed to be practicing matchups. Yeah.
Every 5 minutes he just goes quiet every single time. But anyway, as you can see, I don't know if you just join us or not, but Felkine has 2 crosses on his 2 classes there, which means he has lost with them. We are playing Last Hero Standing, so it is not the win with every deck. It is you have to lose with all of your decks to effectively like lose the series. Bunny Hopper currently still on his mage going to game number 3. He knows it's going to be against Felkine's Rogue, which is Felkine is the Highlander Rogue going up against the Highlander Mage now. So, removing the Highlander Mage personal issues aside for you, Sol, do you think there's a strong favourite here, or do you think it is all up in the air, as you like to talk about?
I definitely think Rogue has game against Mage. It's just the right kind of deck to put pressure on a deck like Mage.
Yeah.
Decent chunky minions, consistent aggression, but also does not run out of value, which is the crucial thing. So decks that don't run out of value, Mage actually has to set up a win condition for themselves, which Rogue, I think that's the problem that Rogue has in the matchup, is if the Mage manages to hit like a counter swing with Alexstrasza or a big Kalecghost blowout or a big Dragoncaster blowout. But I think, card for cards, if it comes down to, just grindiness and late game value, then the Rogue does just
right. Unless Reno's feeling generous any given day, but that's the case no matter what.
Hey, for the record, I'm just going to say I haven't said anything regarding any of these guys. It's been entirely you this whole broadcast so far. I just want that to be known. Okay, I'm being a good boy. You're the spicy one this week.
What have I just said? I'm just talking about Mage.
All right, fine. Yeah, carry on.
No, okay.
Activist, yeah.
That was not how I wanted to deliver that line this weekend, Sol, but fine if you're just going to throw it out there. But wow. So there's all that deep analysis of the late game. You know what? You know who doesn't like late game, Sol, and has no time for them? And Mr. E. Van Cleef.
EVC himself. Yep.
Yeah. And with a
Coin in
coin,
hand,
a shadow step.
in hand. No step target just yet, though, which is the one thing holding back Bunny Hopper from the brink right now. But this could just be footage of Bunny Hopper moments before disaster strikes.
Yeah, and now weird games in the mental aspect here, because at maybe surface level, you could say, oh, well, the Rogue doesn't really run any fancy weapons. Do you just play Swampoos down and just have a minion gain that board early on? But then you're creating targets for Backstab, for Seal of Fate. And so Rogue actually often wants things to kill early on. So it's like a weird sort of almost endless loop I go through, at least in this situation, as to whether you're even supposed to play something or not. I think at the end, you more often don't, because I've been playing a lot of Rogue recently, and I feel like I'm always happy to see someone play a relatively easy to deal with minion early game.
Yeah, Raven, of course, is now the world's leading authority on Highlander Rogue.
Yes. So basically, you know who I am? I'm the overconfident Orc. Have you heard his voice line?
Yeah, it's almost certainly yes, but I don't really pay
It's
attention.
like,
So
I've been
remind me.
training for days.
Yeah,
It's like
okay.
days. That's literally me this week with Rogue. Now the sort of innocuous card in the form of the Vulpera Scoundrel we talked about the other day as well, but it was in relevance to Priest. Is that it's just like this card gets me another card, and it's just fine. You know, like it's not. I don't know. For me, I never really run it because it's a bit too bland. But I do see the value in Mage, especially when, for example, the Mage Legendaries are so powerful that the Discover effect of, say, just discovering another just one strong extra card is often enough, and in the early game you have the time to play it.
Yeah, I really am not a fan of this card. Whenever I look at lists, my mentality is like, if Vulpera Scoundrel is one of the best 30 cards that can go in your deck, I don't think your deck's good enough. Like, I just think this card is like very, very average, and you should be trying to play above average cards in your deck. So I'm kind of curious to see it's being run in multiple lists. Across different classes this week in Grandmasters, so maybe I am underestimating its power level.
I'll be honest, I have never put that card in a list through choice. The only time I've put it in a deck list is when I'm practicing someone else's deck list. You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
I've never built a deck and go, I could do with a Vulpera Scoundrel in this bad boy. It's really going to spice it up. But speaking of spice, Felkane does have access to a rather large Van Cleef, and one of my favourite cards of the new set, and it surprised me that it was, but Bamboozle is sick. Have you played much with this?
Only randomly generated. I have also played a ton of Rogue, but I play 2 Obs Rogue with no natural secret package, but you do still discover a ton of Bamboozles, as being demonstrated right now, of being thrown up.
That's almost the
both
same
options.
discovered twice.
It was pretty close, yeah. But I do agree, the card surprised me. I expected it to be okay, but it's actually better than that. I think it is actually a pretty strong card.
I think what's casual 12/12 Van Cleef. One thing that surprised me maybe the most is not so necessarily like sometimes you get great minions. Yes, that's what the card does, but people. Your opponents will not attack into your minions. They like to play around it. They see a secret and they go, if that's Bamboozle, I've not got an answer to something big. So I'm just not going to kill anything. And it's great. Yeah. You just kill them.
It's so strong against weapon classes as well. When they just want to swing weapons into your minions, and then they take an enormous amount of damage, and the minion still lives.
I took 12 yesterday, Sol, from that demon that can't attack face.
Oh, you also had the imprisoned Antian interaction, right? Where it hit it, and then went dormant after dealing 10. That's a ridiculous interaction.
I loved it because I was the one with the secret soul, so I thought it was correct. It is being changed though for anyone listening. That is going to be amended. Okay. Yes, it's going to change where if a Bamboozle is a dormant minion, the minion is dormant, but the swing gets does not happen. Like, it resets, so you can swing again.
Weird. Okay. That is
it's like, what's the other outcome when you swing and you can swing again because it gets cancelled? I can't remember now. Anyway, there's something else where it happens. But anyway, getting back to this game, Van Cleef is beating someone up.
Yeah, there you go.
Also, Bamboozle lets you play an on-curve flat Van Cleef and be happy about it.
Sure.
Just as I've done that many times, just a 2-2 Van Cleef, and they're like,
Really?
you get a 6-drop on turn 3. Well, 4.
Sure.
Oof. The Pyroblast gonna from Arcane Breath, along with a Dragoncaster. That is a Triforce of team effort there to take down that Van Cleef. But Bunny Hopper did it. And now the question is, how does Felkane finish up this game? Because a lot of the time when you make a Van Cleef that big, the game plan is simple and it stays simple until the game's over.
Yeah. I saw the Dragoncaster Pyroblast line, but sort of while politely listening to you, I was also trying to work out, like, did you have a Dragoncaster Blizzard and then use the minions that plus a Reno next turn to have, like, a quote better clear over the course of 2 turns? But I'm not sure it worked out very reliably. So yeah, I like the line that Bunny Hopper went for in the end.
Yeah, I think the key for me is over the course of 2 turns can be good, but a lot of the time it's 2 turns of the game you're doing one thing, which means it can slow you down a little bit too much.
Yeah, unfortunately, your opponent also gets to play some cards in those 2 turns, which
how unfair.
Sometimes causes disaster. 11 health by default on the board here for Reno, so Bunny would have to attack with the Mana Saber, which is slightly annoying.
I think...
What to do?
Yes. Yeah, okay. Does he just hope he kills the 5/5 so he can attack face and then use ping?
It doesn't. It's just by
sure
far
about
the
that,
most
Sol?
likely. I mean, actually, it's not that much more unlikely
I'm feeling
than
it.
the 1/4 to die. It could happen.
Is Raven right
Wouldn't
once
be the
again?
most ridiculous thing to happen. It is the most likely outcome. It's just because there was also a 1/4 on board, there was a chance that it did die. Normally, there's next to no chance that it dies.
Still does mean that Solarion's going to go down, and honestly, if I have to sacrifice a Mana Saber to get a Solarion on the board, I'm okay with that 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, seems okay.
Bunny Hopper's just got 1 more turn, I would say, to fill out before he starts doing quite powerful things. Maybe 2. Because I even think if he keeps going at this rate, just a flat Alex Straza, Felkane's face might be good enough, as a turn 9 anyway.
Well, he's still a little bit behind from my perspective. His life total's still under threat. And he is, again, slightly behind on board. So it's unlikely that a big old Alex is going to be a winning play for him. Felkane goes ahead and jams the Kronks. He is on a 3 out of 4 invoke right now, so he's just missing 1 if he wants the full power. But I think more and more as time goes on, we're seeing players just kind of play their Galakron for 2, particularly in Highlander lists, right? Like, how often do you actually get 2 4 invokes when you're playing Highlander Road?
Yeah, even when we've been practicing, I've wanted to almost play it on curve in a lot of matchups. Because I've been playing a lot of Highlander as well, and I think I said to you last week, and you did laugh at me a lot, was that playing the Galakron in Rogue for 2 cards, I feel is often just not better than 4, obviously, because that doesn't make sense. But because you can play it, earlier, 2 0 mana cards feel better than a later on 4 cards, right?
I don't remember laughing at you about this last week, but if you said that drawing 2 cards is better than 4,
I did not say that.
I did not say that. Okay.
But I'm just pointing out that 2 cards for 0 mana right now can often be better than 4 cards for 0 mana 5 turns down the way, right?
Yeah, 100%, yeah. Again, particularly in a Highlander list, when, 4 invokes is almost all of the invokes you play in your deck, right? So you have to draw all of them.
I'm going to go for the attacking now. News that it is Ice Barrier.
Backstab Vendetta looks pretty exciting.
Is it cold in the shadows?
I guess so. I guess sure. With limited removal in his hand, he perhaps wants to keep removal for things that he deems more important than a 4/6, since we are reaching that phase of the game now for Bunny Hopper.
Yep. And if he was going to play the Shadow Weaver anyway, because he wants the damage, right? Like, look at Bunny Hopper's health. So if he wanted the 4/3 on the board regardless, I think that just pushes it a little bit over the edge. It's going to be a Blizzard. If Bunny Hopper slows down the board once again, and you might be hitting your favourite part of any mage game, Sol, which is the box time.
Ooh.
Oh, I love this so much. Although, I will say from my experience with Hanara and Chaining Secrets is that you need to get cooking because this takes a while to like play a secret. It discovers them. You pick one, play it, discovers them. You know, it does take a significant amount of time, especially when you sit like Felkane's doing now and working out what you want to pick because it changes your turn with every single card, right? In terms of mana cost, especially.
Netherwind Portal was actually pretty exciting there, just because it's after a spell, so it's very good against like board freezes and Puzzle Box, for example. But it's just so hard not to take the Paladin spell, right? In every iteration, like
it's one mana.
It just feels like oh, eye for an eye. I mean, I guess it's a card.
I think most importantly, it lets you just discover more secrets and play more secrets to discover more secrets. So I feel like every time Paladin's an option, I generally pick it unless there's something hyper specific I want, right? And one thing that we didn't see
Eye
for
for an
Felkane
Eye is probably the one though, right? That's just too bad in most situations.
Yeah.
You want to get something else.
Well, one thing I think Felkane was probably looking for and did not see, as far as I can recall, is a counter spell. Would have been huge going into turn 10 for Mage. There's literally like that and Reno are your two sides of the coin really for turn 10 Mage, right?
No way currently to deal with this board state apart from that Puzzle Box. Deep Freeze now does become an interesting alternative.
Let's see what the secret, at least what some of the secrets are if they get proc. The playing a minion reveals Repentance, Snipe, forgive me, the Ambush. There we go. Are there any others? Oh, Mirror Entity, but there's no Mage secrets.
There's no Mage secrets in play, yeah.
Gonna go.
Bunny's a gamer.
Look at Felkane's face. He's like, oh. Not a bad start.
Time runs out on me.
Oh, Hidden Oasis on the minion is actually a pretty fortunate outcome for Felkane out of the two. Okay, sure.
Woo.
Outcast does not work with Puzzle Box, by the way, just in case you're wondering. And
there it is.
Okay. Good news if you're Felkane, though. No development from the Puzzle Box. Just a board clear, so it was essentially, just a Twisting Nether in that position, which means that Felkane now has the opportunity to just redevelop again onto an empty board.
I honestly feel like that was one of the most 50-50 boxes I've seen for a long time, right? Because Bunny Hopper got some cards, got a secret, got a cheap rolling fireball, but didn't develop minions, but cleared the board. Felkane didn't take tons of damage, Bunny Hopper didn't heal. It just feels like an almost like, let's just make this one even, guys. And then carry on with the game.
My personal biases against this deck and that card aside, it's why it's run, right? It seems like it should just be like a Mimi fun card for casuals, but on average, if you just get one big board clear out of your 10 spells, which happens very often, the other stuff doesn't matter because you'll pay 10 mana for a Twisting Nether because Highlander decks do that all the time. They go Zephyrus into Twisting Nether and they pay 10 mana for a Twisting Nether,
Speaking of which.
It's just a very valid thing to be able to do, plus the potential that sometimes it just completely scams the game.
Right.
That's just a card that you play. You have to play that card.
Well, literally Yogg-Saron from back in the day. But here, there's a couple of choices, but for me, there is one card that's a lot more flexible than the other, and they both remove the board. So I think you hop on board with Reno right now instead of the Zephyrus or anything overly fancy. This just gets rid of them all, locks in Reno, gains 5 armor, and now Bunny Hopper needs to build on whatever Reno may or may not do with this Zephyrus, with this Deep Freeze, this Kartuk Defender, Bone Wraith. There's actually all the defensive tools in the world. So now I think we're at the point where Felkane just pushing past and winning the game now is probably slipping away and becoming quite unlikely.
Agreed. I think he needs to reset and grind now. I think he's out of big threats in hand to just keep developing for pressure. So I think as much as possible he needs to be looking at a grindy game plan here as much as he can. Yeah, sure.
It was either going to be that or a King Crush. There is no in between. Or if you
Octisari, the absolute boy.
Or if you Derek, it would have been a Diving Griffin.
Yeah, there you go. Having now discovered that King Crush, though, It might be that Falcane's eyes just light up again. He decides he can go back to the aggressive plan.
He also has Cobalt Spellkin, which, you know, 1-mana rogue cards, Sinister Strike's involved. Like, there are ways he has an Eviscerate already in hand. Excuse me. So there are many, many ways in which he can get this damage. Just lackeys exist. I really wondered if this was the turn for the Deep Freeze or not.
I think with how perfectly that worked out into an ambush, that's probably where Bunny Hopper's head was at, that he knew he hadn't tested for ambush off that secret yet. So if ambush comes down, like, that was just such a clean answer, right?
Yeah, for me, it's one of those options where while the board's weak, can you just steal the board here? You know, and like just get the 2 Water Elementals down. But I do agree in terms of just having a clean clear. That looked pretty nice. Falcane, not the happiest chappy in the world with these discovers.
Bob, I'm not playing Murlocs. Reroll. Jeez.
I always knew you could do it. Oh, whatever he says, I don't know. I stopped listening to Bob when I know he tells all my opponents the same thing. He plays us off against each other. What a ruthless little dude.
What a scumbag, hey?
I have trained for
Is he gonna go for the blackjack on this? No, just gonna go for a trade instead.
The secret is Bamboozle, though, by the way, so this is not gonna go how Falcane might expect.
Yes! It's so great. I love Bamboozle so much.
That is now an 11-mana Burly Shovel Fist in Bunny Hopper's hand, which 1/2 killer 9/9. Pretty good card.
Ooh, and burn a Deep Freeze. That looked pretty good, honestly, for Falcane there. Just knowing there's just any kind of burn, and also just the Deep Freeze going away. It's just a little bit few less Water Elementals to deal with.
Yep.
Still not out of the woods yet, though. This is looking rough. And just a reminder, you know, Falcane's already lost to this mage once. If he loses to it again in this game, he is knocked down into the lower bracket of the group.
Yep.
He just chuck us.
Still think he's in an okay position here, though. Still, he is as dire as it looks because he's sort of slipping away from his lethal plan, which is about all his hand does right now. You know, it only takes 1 or 2 Dragon Lackeys into a Waxadread or another Dragon Queen Alexstrasza, and then suddenly he can just start playing the value game all over again. You know, Highlander Rogue is so good at transitioning from aggression to value and then back again, just on a whim, essentially, based on, you know, a couple of outcomes on any given turn.
Oh, okay.
Damn, he'd really like that Rush Lackey back in his hand right now. Divine Shield Wind Fury with the Rush from the Lackey would have been an extremely effective clear here. Because, of course, the Divine Shield would not get... you would resist the freeze off the first attack with the Divine Shield.
Yep, the freeze has to do damage, right? Just gonna go for King Crush, and was that all just aimed at the face? I love it. So the player can get behind.
Imagine trading with King Crush, Raven. I want you to imagine it.
Embiggen played there by Bunny Hopper, so any minions he has left going to be a little bit more expensive, a little bit bigger, but I don't even think he's got that many left, has he? We've seen the Caligos, there's Alexstrasza, Bone Wraith, Doomsayer, Zephyrus. You know, there's a lot in his hand, actually.
There is.
What would
Just
make us
trying to reverse engineer what minions he has left. You're right, it's not an awful lot. There's a Twilight Drake, I think, still remaining.
Potentially, yeah.
Now.
Are you surprised at all with that trade? You think he just wanted to prot the secret?
I think so, yeah. He knows that the attack is freezing anyway, regardless of what he does. So I don't think it makes too big of an impact.
Not if it was Divine Shield, right?
I guess so, yeah.
If it was the Colossus of the moon.
Colossus of the moon, yeah.
Oh, flick, nice. I'll say cheap removal. It's not cheap, but it's just such hard removal that it's not bad for 6 mana. And again, another pretty solid bamboozle outcome as well.
There is the Draconic Lackey. Does this Alexstrasza need to be flicked this turn, though?
Well, now because the hero power, he can't do it any other way, can he? So I think the answer is a yes.
I think this finally signals potentially the transition turn. He does still have a nice big board, so he is still kind of threatening lethal. But he pressed his hero power for one of the first times. Not sure if he actually pressed it before this. And just insta-hit the Draconic Lackey, right? Which I think gave him a lot of confidence. Just be like, okay, I can just throw all this damage I've been holding for some time at minions now. And I'm chilling.
Oh, the Malygos was in the deck, which sort of makes that a bit of a scary minion actually now.
What would make us rich?
Yeah, it's weirdly not active, though, in a hand of 10 cards.
Yep. With many minions.
Yeah.
Activist.
If I could just
Blizzard
cast that.
looks like the best of a... I won't say a bad bunch in terms of his hand is bad, but to do what he needs to do this turn, it didn't look great, and it's not the most mind-blowing Blizzard I've seen, honestly. Does still have this Zephyrus, but I'm not really sure. Like, what is he looking for this Zephyrus to do at this point in the game if we're playing value? Is it going to be a Tyrion? Is it going to be anything too crazy? Or are we going to have the usual either Tyrion or Twisting Nether, which is often the case?
I mean, those are the big two, right? Even if you are sort of going late game threat for threat with your opponent,
yeah.
You know, either they get on top of you or you get on top of them, or you need one final threat. So that's kind of where that dichotomy of Tyrion or Twisting Nether comes into it.
And then Inner Demon's just the one sat in the middle. He's like, I'll just end the game sometimes. Wow. That was a good explosive shot, actually.
It was decent, yeah. Doesn't do a great deal to the Seer map, because of course obviously Mage Ping is gone in Sacrifice for Reno Take the Wheel.
Is this just a Solarian time? I feel like this is a good Solarian board. There's enemies to target, which means... Because the problem is, if there are no enemies to target, you know, apart from face, but certain things can't go face or whatever, then you do target yourself. It doesn't just not cast aggressive spells.
Yes.
You can target yourself. So honestly, it's a weird thing where Solarian, although a great card almost no matter what, is a really good card if there's just, I feel like, one or two minions on the board you want dealing with.
Yeah, sure.
Because if there's a wide board, you don't necessarily get AoE, but, you know, just one or two, there's a lot of spells that can deal with this now. Deep Freeze, that's one. Every time!
Every time!
Oh, so it does all this before the Yogg box goes? I did not know that. Oh, I guess it makes sense that it has to finish one, right? Wow. Wait. Oh, that's the box. Oh, I'm so confused. I'm so confused.
What are you talking about?
I'm just confused about what's going on.
Ooh, Plague of Death, okay. Sprint!
Ooh, wow. All that for a worthless imp. Okay, and an air raid.
Wow.
Felkane has to be pretty happy with that.
For sure, yeah. That was an emotional roller coaster of a Solarian Prime for Felkane, for sure. But in the end, the Plague of Death plus the sprint, I think maybe Felkane came out even ahead.
There wasn't even much of a board. I mean, 3 1-1s. Not much to look at, is it, if you Felkane? Not really too upset about that.
I don't think there's any way card draw is being taken off this. Yikes.
Well, that's unfortunate. Still, though, it's a lot of stuff, I guess. There is still Zephyrus available, so Bunny Hopper can, you know, break that box in case of emergency. And he might have to. What's the... Okay, he could actually go for Malygos? To set up for Flame Strike, but then he has to get exactly Flame Strike, and there's not the mana for it.
And he's just leaving all this stuff on board right now. Like that doesn't seem like a good plan.
No. For some reason, I thought he had a Frost Nova in his hand, and he just doesn't.
Ruin. Smart line from Bunny, manipulating the Shadow Word Ruin, realizing that he can essentially get the full clear here with a cheap option as opposed to looking for an expensive one. Good Zephyrus usage. I like it. Falcane could have done with just a standalone lackey, essentially. You know, just one of the ones you can just play and be happy about it. Faceless, Draconic, Ethereal. And then he had a very, very strong turn here with Faceless Corruptor. Goblin Lackey, not quite as good feeling. But he's still going to go ahead and do it. Just missing out on a bit of extra value.
Yep. And I respect this as well, right? Just because it's not perfect doesn't mean you shouldn't do the job. These get the work done. Bamboozle is live, which means that one of these is going to go to an 8-drop if it is attacked. Oof. That is a rather large Alexstrasza.
Life and hope of Wolf fighting.
It's so weird now, right? Because it's like Bunny Hopper has obviously recognized that he is now the aggro, which is so bizarre just watching Rogue matchups just flip on their head.
Yeah.
Like, you know, Rogue starts off aggressive, and it's like, all right, cool, I'm Galakron now. I press my button and I outvalue everything. So now Bunny Hopper with the card draw and the imminent fatigue now has to be the aggressor himself.
And he's getting some good options, although these dragons aren't the mind-blowing ones. You know, there's one dragon that's hard to remove. There's one dragon that discovers another dragon, you know, which means you can just put more bodies on the board over the course of the next few turns.
Yeah.
So, although nothing too crazy, like, Noz Dormu, for example, but it's good enough, I would say, for now. And with Vanish long gone, you know, Rogue doesn't really have the ability to deal with the wide board right now, especially when it's such an awkward size like this.
Falcane, unfortunately for him, finds his Zephyrus to be bottom 3. Has not played that card this game, which could just potentially be GG in this position with Bunny Hopper starting to fatigue and this being one of his last real massive pushes towards the board.
And that was definitely not the lackey he wanted either. Just pretty much what exactly Ethereal lackey wanted there to try and get something done.
Gonna get hit with the Repentance here. I'm not sure what the rest of his turn is gonna be. But if it's just this and Escape Mana Saber, then I guess the sequencing is fine. Oh, Lightning Bolt! Okay, sure.
So Bunny Hopper needs 7. Which
Wait, what?
is
8, 10, 20, yeah.
Yeah, which is, I was gonna say, is doable. Ooh. Are you surprised at this swing?
He lets the Bamboozle rip. Interesting.
That was 10 damage to the face.
It was.
Oh. That would have been 3.
He did miss the Fireball though, so he wouldn't have had lethal.
Explosion's nice though.
Explosion is pretty solid. Yeah.
Mm.
Fairly confident it's not draw 4.
Fairly confident. Imagine. But then this is going to be a good Conjurer's Calling target, which I guess is why he went for the trade, but...
Oh!
I mean... Alright, Bunny Hopper.
Oh!
Imagine if he went face, then Conjuring.
Yeah.
Missed lethal. But no, for me, honestly, that trade just confused me. I don't really know what to make of it. I didn't really think it was needed.
I'm not really with it either, because he knows there's a Zephyrus left, right? Which, unless I'm an idiot and have forgotten it being played and my deck tracker is wrong, is one of these last
It's a lot of ifs. I don't know. Because for me as well, there was always the thing of, well, you could have just put the Bone Wraith into it to see what happened. If you were really intent on proccing it to see, because you lose a Bone Wraith, but does that really change too much about the game versus missing potentially 10 damage, which he did? It's a strange one. I might have to speak to him about that one afterwards because I'm very interested.
It's fine. He got it all back with the King Crush anyway.
Oh, I mean, yeah, don't get me wrong. I don't think Bunny Hopper just threw the game at all. But it was definitely a play I would never have even considered. Is why I'm a bit flummoxed. There's still Polymorph, there's good answers, and also Bunny Hopper, even if there's some way that Falcane can hold on to this, Bunny Hopper's still got that Boom Pistol Bully that is plays havoc with a lot of rogue plays as well, so he's got a lot he can use to lock out this game, if that's even required.
Falcane just activating every possible out he could possibly think of. Nothing doing though. Bone Wraith in the way is not going to be enough.
No.
Damage is already there on board. Lethal showing, but Bunny Hopper rips the Polymorph anyway, and he is going to pick up a 3-1 victory in this series.
Yep, takes the win there over Falcane. Falcane going down to the lower bracket of the group. He is not out yet, and we'll see him a little bit later on. But congratulations to Bunny Hopper moving on to the winner's side of the group, which means he only needs to win one more match to be able to go through into Sunday. And a great start for Bunny Hopper. He was not here in the top 8 last week. He's made it this week, and it looks like so far he's making it count.
Yeah, for sure. And Highlander Mage looking very effective, winning 2 different matchups on 2 very different sides of the coin. One matchup where he did have to play pure control, essentially, against the more aggressive Zoo. And then one matchup where he had to demonstrate what a Swiss Army knife mage is, as well as rogue is, right? Because each of those decks went through just about every different role possible in that one matchup, from playing tempo to playing outright aggression for face to playing straight up value later on. At different times, each of those decks was playing those roles, and each deck did each of those things well in the regard that they needed to. It just shows how versatile they both are.
Yeah, it's definitely a fun one to watch, but that is match 1 done with. We can check out the bracket and see what it looks like for Group A so far today, especially if you're just tuning in. We can take a look, see how it's going to play out. Bunny Hopper taking the win versus Falcane. Tice and Yala we have coming up next to decide who's going to go against Bunny Hopper to get that first place finish in the Europe Group A, which means they're going to be going into Sunday looking comfortable. Falcane, on the other hand, is not out, but he is in the elimination bracket, which means he will be facing the loser of Tice versus Yala to stay in with a chance to make it to Sunday.
Yeah, a lot of important matchups to come. Of course, as we mentioned, several people in this group, 3 out of the 4, were here last week. And trying to build on that, just 2 qualifications in a row should be good enough. But I think most crucial for Bunny Hopper, as the player that did not have big points under his belt going into this, he's the one that really, really needs that win to cement a place in Division A in the long run.
Yeah, and what's important as well is even if he doesn't win the whole weekend, every win he gets moves his, gets him further towards even just 1-2 extra points is a big deal if he can make it to that final day. It's going to be very important to make up for some of the points he did lose because he never had them in the first place, but did not gain in the previous week. And especially if he can just make a half decent run of it next week, he's going to be looking a little bit better. And that's the importance of these 3 weeks of Swiss for me, Sol, is just one good week can really change up where you feel your position is going to end up. Obviously, everyone else is affected by each other, but for yourself, just having that one solid week means that your points look so much better than they would normally. It's crazy. Yeah,
I think the breakdown of the points is pretty good overall. I'm sure some players have some complaints over it because they're Hearthstone players. That's what they do. But, the idea that if you win 1 week, you're pretty much auto-qualified, that feels right? Like, yep. You want one of the people that won one of the Swiss weeks to all be in the upper division. 2 qualifications into top 8 pretty much locks you up into the top division. That feels right. So, just the way that the points break down in the way that the divisions then divide, I think has been done pretty well overall.
Yeah, it really has. Our next matchup is going to be Tice versus Yala, so 2 players that